It is time for another countdown, and this time it's a sequel to this episode of Life Lessons. So these are things I've learned throughout life. Sometimes it's the hard way, sometimes it's just from experiences. And that last video is pretty widely well received, even though it has nothing to do with extreme collectibles or extreme traveling, but I think it does lead to an extremely successful life. So today in episode 2, we're going to go over some of these, and hopefully you can either relate to some, or maybe you can avoid some landmines by listening to somebody who is much older and wiser. Yes, I'm a lot older than I look. Hard to tell with this amazing hair, right? Hey, my name is Mr. X. Welcome to the Xtreme channel. We are giving away $1,000 statues to you guys. If you want to know how to win one, stay tuned for later in the video. So if you're new to the Xtreme channel, most of the time the content on here is about extreme lifestyle, including collectibles and travel and just crazy stuff. Now, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, especially my wife. However, I'm pretty happy in life, and honestly, as long as you're not hurting others, that's really all that matters. Now, a lot of people look at me and they say, you know what, if I had your life, I'd be pretty happy too. Well, I feel that I've built this life. Don't get me wrong, I've had a lot of help and support. No, I've never won the lottery. I didn't have rich parents. I had very humble beginnings. And through a lot of relationships and, frankly, working hard and being intelligent, a lot of things have worked in my favor. But I want to tell you 10 new topics in episode 2 today of life lessons that I've learned that I think have excelled me even further than those basic concepts. So some of these I'm going to elaborate even more on, but let's start with number 1. My wife is a big reason for my success. And the day I'm filming this is about 5 days before our 20th wedding anniversary, which is absolutely nuts. This is launching probably a month after that. But we've been married for 20 years. And, you know, around 8 or 10 years, we heard somebody say this very important thing, and it kind of changed our lives. And they said that the number one person in your life should be, if you have a faith, anything of that, whether it's God or Jesus or Muhammad, or maybe you're an atheist, so that doesn't apply to you. But the number 2 should be your spouse, and then number 3, kids, and so on and so forth. That's, of course, if you're married and you have children. Now, the problem with that is, especially if you have young children and careers, very rarely is the spouse your second most important thing in your life. Why? Because you have to work to get food. Your kids are loud and scream and get more attention than your spouse. But my life lesson number 1 is choose your spouse over your kids. That doesn't mean you neglect your kids. For those of you that follow me, you know how much my kids mean to me. However, they come a very, very easy second to my wife. That wasn't always the case, especially when they were young. And I think my wife, Mrs. X, can say the same thing. But when we were married for about 10 years, we noticed that, hey, her and I were kind of growing apart. And we're like, let's become best friends again. Let's put the kids second. Let's put money second. Let's make you and me one of our top priorities in life. And it's worked really well. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes consistent, intentional effort time after time. So that's the thing that I'm going to challenge you. Even if the kids are screaming loud, even if the kids want attention, make sure you're not doing it at the expense of your spouse. Kids, number 2. As long as spouse is being number 1, make sure you are intentional with your time with your kids. This is really important to me, especially when I travel so much. But we just came off vacation, and I did a video right here on it. You can check it out. But when I'm on vacation with my kids, I like to play with my kids. I like to hang out with my kids. When we do family vacations, we hang out together. So for example, I was throwing the ball back and forth with my son in the pool. Just throwing a ball back and forth. That's all we were doing. And constantly, this happens every vacation, other kids want to come in and play. I have no idea where these other kids' parents are. And they'll even ask, can I play? And I tell them, no, this is time for me and my son. I almost want to be a smartass and say, why don't you go find your father or mother and play with them? And unfortunately, they can't because they're nowhere to be found. But be very intentional with your time with your kids. You think they don't notice that? Even with my crazy travel schedule, I am very intentional about not missing events, whether that's sports games or stupid stuff like 8th grade graduation. I mean, really? I had to go to one recently. It's like participation ribbons, but I still went. Kids will notice that. Number 3, it is worth it to splurge. I know everyone thinks here I have an unlimited bank account. I clearly don't. There is a limit on it. When I spend all this money on certain things, sometimes it's probably not the best money decision, but it is so worth it. You know, we just came from Disney as part of that trip, and I actually have another video on that is either launched or it hasn't. But sometimes it's worth it. It's worth to spend that extra money, whether you're going in first class, whether you're buying something really nice, whether you're staying at a nicer hotel, whether you're paying for all these fucking fast passes that cost $1,000 more at Disney. It is worth it to splurge sometimes. Don't always be a cheap ass. Number 4, tip big. I'm a huge tipper. Now, I'm not talking about when you use the self-checkout and it asks you to tip. Yes, some self-checkouts ask you to tip, but I'm talking about if you're at a restaurant. You know, we recently were at Coco Cay, Bahama, perfect day. We had a cabana. Cabana was so expensive. It was $1,600. So we had our own private waiter. At the end of it, I didn't have any cash, and I asked her, hey, is there an electronic way I can tip you? And she steps back. She's like, it's okay. I'm all right. And I was like, no, I'd like to tip you. And it just blew her mind. She gave me her personal PayPal. Hopefully she doesn't get in trouble. And I sent her a couple $100. I, most of the time, will tip 20% if it's bad. If it's good service, I might tip 50 to 100%. I think tipping big is huge, especially if you have the means to do it. I mean, yeah, if you spend $50 on a meal and you tip an extra $30 or even $50, you may not miss that money, but it may mean the world to that person who's hustling their ass off who just got stiffed by the previous person. So I think you should tip big. Number 5, one of the biggest things you should splurge on is a nice bed. We have a king size, Tempur-Pedic, bamboo sheets, everything you can imagine, and it is the most comfortable place on earth. I mean, think about how much time you spend in bed. Now, granted, I know I sleep in other beds in hotels for most of the year. It is so worth it. Invest in an absolutely amazing and great bed. Sleep has so many benefits, not just from a sanity standpoint, but from a health standpoint, from a relaxation standpoint. Invest in a good bed. All right, we're halfway through. What are some of your life lessons? Throw that down in the comments below because we're still doing a statue giveaway and we're really close. As we try to grow this channel, we like to reward you guys for watching and subscribing. So because of that, every 5,000 milestone when it comes to subscribers, we give away a couple $1,000s worth of statues. We've actually given away over 20 statues. To win one was easy. First, you gotta be subscribed to the channel. You'll get bell notifications when videos drop. Each video that drops, you want to make a comment on those videos. We pick a random video, we give away statues based on a comment. You can say whatever you want. The more videos you comment on, the higher your chances are to win. Number 6, another thing with relationships, do not go to bed angry. I am 100% serious. My wife and I, we don't sleep in separate beds under any circumstances. In fact, when we go to bed, we always snuggle, whatever you want to call it. It's just a thing we do. Now remember, you're a lot more emotional at night. Everybody is. You're tired, so your brain is not functioning on logic as much. It's functioning on emotions. Make the conscious decision, you know what? I may be mad at this person. Maybe they did something wrong, but they're part of my life. I love them. I'm going to forgive them even if they don't deserve it because that's what real love is. We've talked about that before in other episodes. But do not go to bed angry. It just makes everything worse. And along with that, be the first one to say you're sorry even when you shouldn't have to. It shows vulnerability. It makes the other person vulnerable. The ends justify the means. So what if you were the first one to admit you were sorry when you really shouldn't have had to? It carries a lot of static and it solves the problem. Number 8, this is one I'm still learning. You don't always have to respond to people. So recently on this trip, we were upgraded to first class on the way there, and so was another family. And you can see the family's names. So they were the Andersons. And what was interesting was they were a little hoity-toity. I think the mother's name might have been Karen, but that was fine. Then they ended up on the same cruise boat as us. And the husband, he actually had a broken leg, bless his heart. Always tough to do a vacation like that. Well, we would always go into the theater, and we sat in the theater 30 minutes early to make sure we got a good seat. And we sat right in the back so we could leave early. It's up a few steps, and she comes in, and my wife has to use the restroom. So my wife gets up from the one seat, and she goes to use the restroom. Well, the Andersons come in, and Karen demands that empty seat that my wife has. And I said, I'm sorry, my wife's sitting there. And of course, I don't know this lady. And she goes, she started talking about how rude I was taking up a handicapped seat. First of all, it wasn't a handicapped seat. It was actually up some stairs. They don't put handicapped seats upstairs. Second, this was 1 minute before the show started. So your inability to plan has nothing to do with me sitting in a chair that I prefer. I was ready to respond to Karen. I didn't. I really wanted to. Most of the time, Mrs. X has to put a hand on my chest to hold me back, but I didn't say a word. It wasn't going to solve anything. She was wrong, and she was going to continue to be wrong, whether I said anything about it or not. You don't always have to respond. I love the saying that silence is the best way to answer a fool. You know, I learned that with YouTube hater comments as well. I used to respond to every single one. I used to acknowledge them. Now I just ignore them. So silence is the best way to answer a fool. I love to eat. I love to drink. I am very inconsistent about exercise. So I will go 6 to 12 months of exercising 6 days a week, and then I'll take 6 months off. Anytime I'm consistently exercising, whether it's going for a 4-mile walk or a 2-mile run or lifting weights, especially early in the morning, the feeling of satisfaction you get on so many different levels will never compare to the feeling of satisfaction from alcohol or food. It is always better. Exercise has so many benefits that it can't be overstated. Now, my last one, I've learned this as a leader. One time I said that, well, nobody here likes me anyway, and I was the boss. And someone's like, oh, I wouldn't say that. I was like, don't bullshit me. Nobody here likes me. And they're like, yeah, that's kind of true, but everybody respects you. And I will die on that hill. And a few months later, another person said, you know, I never liked you, but you made me a lot of money, and I respect that. So it's better to have people respect you than like you. It's more important to have them respect you than have them liking you. Hopefully you can do both, but make sure they respect you before you worry whether or not they like you, especially if you're a leader. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional leader with a specific company. It could just be you're a natural leader with a group of people. So those are my life lessons. Hopefully you took something away from it. If not, you got to stare at my mug for 10 minutes. That was probably great. Hey, thank you so much. I love doing these videos, and I know a lot of you really enjoy them, so please hit that like button. It really helps me. And even if you like this content, then subscribe. And if you don't, subscribe too, because usually I do other content. See what I did there?